Hi, my name's Elle Stokes. I'm a social media ambassador for NYT, and I'm here with the lovely Amy.
Yes. Hi, I'm Amy. I'm also an NYT member and a social media ambassador, and I'm taking my own solo play to Edinburgh Fringe.
That's amazing. I don't think I could ever do that, ever.
You always think that before you do it, and then you're kind of
Yeah.
like, actually, I think you get to maybe a certain, or I got to a certain point, and I was like, I just need to do something to prove myself. And also, you know, I want the exposure. So
Yeah.
you reach a certain level of like, I think frustrated and maybe slightly crazy. The play is called Lost Girl. It's on at Underbelly for the whole month in Edinburgh. And it's about this girl who's quite she just finished school, but she's not gone to uni and she doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life. And then she has this one very close friend who's also not gone to uni and she's always kind of been in her shadow. And it was meant to be the two of them. And then this friend just turns around to her and says, actually, I'm going to go traveling. The main character, her name's Birdie, she kind of through her frustration, she accidentally stumbles upon a family secret. It looks at girlhood through like a Jewish Arab lens. So the main character is Jewish and her grandfather is Egyptian Jewish. So she has Arab heritage. And she accidentally uncovers a secret that her grandfather has been keeping. And yeah, it's kind of got like those different threads in it, and it's inspired by my own family history. So I'm Jewish and I have Lebanese, Egyptian, and Syrian Jewish heritage through my paternal grandmother. And she told me a family secret about a year ago, and I was like, that's crazy. Why have you never mentioned this before? And yeah, and then it just marinated and became the show.
Had you been thinking about like doing something solo for a while, or was it sort of like the idea came and then you thought, oh, this would be the best way to present this?
So I did I did Edinburgh 2 years ago. I'd written a play that had won a funding prize, and that was on for 2 weeks. And I was also in another, so I'd written my own play and I wasn't in that, but then I was in another show at the same time. And I really loved it. It was really stressful though. And I thought I then, as soon as I'd done that, I'd graduated uni and I was back at home. And I think it just got to the point where I'm the kind of person or the kind of actor who just doesn't really like to sit and wait for the phone to ring or for my
Yeah.
agent to get me work. So I do either search for my own opportunities or make my own work or do stuff through
Mm.
NYT when there are opportunities. And I think I'm a writer as well. And I've been writing for much less time than acting, but my writing career has gone up like exponentially. And I was very lucky. I got on like a paid script development scheme with Channel 4. Alongside the scheme, we'd get kind of industry workshops. And this guy who was an agent, a literary agent at Curtis Brown, was basically just talking about how a lot of the time literally go to Edinburgh and watch a lot of shows, and it's kind of the place where there's like a lot of work and exposure. And I was kind of like, I think I need to go back to not only get exposure for my writing, but hopefully my acting and really strategize. There was already this idea of like a story that I'm kind of scared to tell, but think it's important to tell. And then also this feeling of, oh no, I need to go to Fringe. So I'd been to Edinburgh before when I was like 15. My parents had taken us for a holiday and really loved it then. And then when I was next time I went, I was 21, and it was a very different experience because
Yeah.
I was there as like I wasn't just there as a punter, I was there taking my work. I got to a place in my career where I felt like it's been a year and I'm ready to level up. Yeah, it felt like a good time to do it.
What do you want audiences to get from your show? Like, what would be your like dream impact?
Yeah, I mean, I really want audiences to enjoy it, and to hopefully just be in it for the hour. And a lot of so I've done a few previews. I've done 3 previews in Manchester now, and a lot of people came away saying they really learned something. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about like identity and ethnicity, and I think that the show gives an idea of like you can have lots of different identities. You can, there shouldn't be some sort of binary, and I think that that's really, really important right now, when people are trying to maybe make very obvious narratives about lots of different identities. So I hope that people enjoy it first and foremost, but I also hope that they leave it kind of feeling like they maybe learned something and maybe related to it, even if they aren't, if they aren't like there's lots of things in it that are hopefully universal or kind of at least linked to girlhood, even if you're not Jewish or Arab or Jewish Arab identity.
So is there anything like, are there any sort of like shows that influence this show, or like any things that you've seen or worked on that have had an impact on this show?
My God, influences. I mean, it's so hard because when I was wanting to write the show and I was so daunted by the idea of writing a one woman play. So I did try and read a lot of one woman plays. So there's very obviously like Fleabag, but then I read Bunny by Jack Thorne, and kind of watched snippets of Bubblegum Dreams by Michaela Cole. So trying to understand the form as best as I could. But also I think it wasn't just theatre that inspired it, because I'd read for this kind of show, I'd done so much research. So I read a book called The Flying Camel and Essays on Identity by Women of North African and Middle Eastern Jewish Heritage. And it was incredible. It was kind of these women who were kind of each essay was by young women or women who were from different places around North Africa and the Middle East, and basically talking about a reflection on their identity and that intersection in their identity. And I learned so much because there's so little about it. I think that particular intersection, especially if you're a woman, is so underrepresented and just invisible. So I loved it.
If I came to you and said, I want to write a one woman play and get it in an established, because Underbelly is pretty established, well done.
It's top five.
What advice would you give to me?
Oh, that's such a difficult question, but an important one, I think. Because I think when you're doing something like this, you never think about, because this is like almost not the end result because I've not done Edinburgh yet.
Yeah.
I think beforehand, it's the kind of thing where you think you can't do it. So I suppose I should have said in the inspiration bit, like what inspired me. I have a lot of friends I went to uni with made solo shows. Like one of my really close friends at uni, she took a solo show to Edinburgh at Underbelly last year. She's doing it again. Her name is Maria Telnikov, and her show is called All the Men Are Going to Hate Me. So just a plug for her. She's amazing. And so I think it's even just starting with, if you want to write your own solo show and then get it on at an established venue in Edinburgh Fringe, I think there's a lot of watching and reading other people's work and maybe being inspired by, it doesn't have to be these big professional people, even though obviously I see my friends as these incredible big professional people as well, but people who may also be your peers or were your peers. I think if you're a student, that can be really helpful. So where I went to uni, I went to Cambridge, and like their theatre scene was just mad. There were like 4 shows a week programmed in the theatre, and those are just the main theatres. So it was kind of being really inspired to see all these young people who were students but still being brave enough to make their own work. So I'd say kind of watching and reading, and if you're a student, making the most of that scene, because that is a place where you're not on like a big enough scale that it's okay to make mistakes and to experiment, and maybe also financially it's less of a risk. And then I'd say if you have something that you really care about, if you have a specific or unique angle that you can use, because that will really help you in terms of writing something that maybe is interesting. And as I said, when I was writing my play, I was inspired by so many other things. Like, you realize you've never had a unique thought in your life. But I think it's important to maybe think about the reason why you're doing it. Because I know that I said, oh, I want to do it because I want the exposure and I want to challenge myself. But I also think that the reason should also be that you have something really important to say, or something that you're really passionate about. And I think I'd maybe just make sure that you're happy with the play first, although actually this is critical of coming from me. But like, I think it's important to maybe be happy with the piece first. My story is slightly back to front in that I got a commission to write the first 10 minutes of this play by just a local theatre company. And then I did it and really enjoyed it. And it was already March of this year. And I was like, I need to take this to Underbelly. So I applied to kind of the Big Four with an extract of the play, and I got a slot. So I'd actually got my slot before I'd written the whole
thing,
play, which was crazy. Don't do it that way around. But I think because I've done Edinburgh before, and maybe
it wasn't such a big deal.
And I also really knew what the play already was, because I'd already researched it so intensely. I just and planned it. I just hadn't written all of it yet. But I wouldn't maybe recommend doing that. But everyone's process is different. I'd say kind of the planning in advance is good. And kind of being aware of what those timelines are if you do want to take it to Fringe. And if there are festivals that you can preview at as well. So this is once you've written your play. But I'd say the writing is the most important thing. And if it's something that's very specific, getting that research really right. And, going through a few drafts and making sure that you have something that you are proud of and then can take elsewhere. Because this, even though it was not fully written after I got the slot, I still did like a snippet of it at the NYT Brink night back in end of January. And then I had the commission that was 10 minutes. And then I had a preview in May at the Manchester Jewish Museum. They do like a scratch spring season. So making sure that you do have that time to develop it, and that you care about it and you're proud of it. With the second part of the question, getting it on an established venue, that's really hard. I think it really depends on your level of experience and what you've done. And there is also there's no shame in taking it to a venue that maybe is slightly lower tier, or workshopping it and maybe getting more experience until maybe you feel that you're ready to go up for someone slightly more established. Because I did really have to, when my first show was on at Edinburgh, it was on at the Space. And like, that's quite commonplace for student theatre or for people who are first time taking something to Edinburgh. So I'd maybe just really think about where you're at in your career. What are the steps you need to take to get to where you want to be? If that's an established venue, then maybe think about taking that show and doing a run of it. If you're based in London, you're very lucky. There's like lots of pub theatres, or there's fringe festivals like the Camden Fringe that you could do it at, or Brixton Fringe. Or if you're based in say the Northwest, there's the Greater Manchester Fringe, which is really great. I know people who've done like Buxton Fringe, and kind of maybe building your way up. You don't have to jump in the deep end and do Edinburgh straight away. And maybe think about what are the stepping stones in between. Is there like a script development group or scheme that you could apply for that might help you? Are there kind of swimming badges that you can earn that will hopefully help you get the credentials to get in those doors? Sorry, that was so rambly.
No, that's okay. So sort of like having it as kind of a long-term goal, and sort of having like little check-in points.
Yeah,
I'd say so.
But I think what's really interesting is everyone has such different routes into the industry. And it really depends where you're at. And also, some people, you might still get a slot at a great venue without having done those things. I don't know how maybe programmers' brains really work. And I think if you have maybe a really strong idea and you're a really strong writer and you can prove that you're a strong performer, there may be like less traditional routes that you have to go down. But that was just the way it happened for me.
How do you deal with the sort of like loneliness and self-doubt that can come from doing a solo show?
Yeah, it's quite new to me. I think the self-doubt's not new. And in some ways, like I think you can feel those two things in like lots of different contexts, even if it's not in relation to a show. So if you're a person who's experiencing that because of a show for the first time, you also have experience of hopefully coping with that in another way. I won't lie, I found it in some ways quite difficult. I think it's quite hard when you're doing a play and it's just you and your director. I know some people who have done it without directors, and I do not know how, because I would have gone crazy. So things I have done to help combat that is I have sometimes brought another pair of eyes in the room. So my show involves a lot of multi-rolling. I think I play about, there's one main character, but I multi-roll of about, at one point, there's 12 different characters that I play. And I had a voice coach come and help me with the kind of differentiation and my projection and that kind of thing. And she was really helpful sometimes to just have an extra person in the room. So I think that can really help combat the loneliness. Talking about it, I in my life as a freelancer, being a freelancer generally can be quite lonely. So I'm not kind of, that's something that's not new to me, but I am kind of, my other kind of various freelancer jobs are I'm on youth boards for a few different theatre companies, and one of them is called Barrel Organ, and they had some really successful runs at Edinburgh Fringe, and they do like regular advice sessions, like one-on-one with their youth panel, and they just kind of said, look, if you need someone to talk to outside of Fringe, you can talk to us. I did get there, they gave me I asked for their advice on what to do with basically how do I, because I was really worrying about how I would cope if I got negative feedback, because I think that's really hard. It's hard anyway. I think it's important, and I have had it before, many times before, but I think it's especially difficult when it's just you, when you are the performer and the writer and you are the only one who people see. And they just gave me some really good advice, which is just remember that if there is a reviewer or a person, that's the nature of art. It's subjective. It's not always personal because people want to put their own stamp on things. And I think with the self-doubt, another thing I was told is writing a solo show, performing it, and getting it on at a prestigious venue at Edinburgh Fringe is already an achievement, and doing that is already brave. So trying to hold on to that, even if you're worrying about what if not many people come, or what if people don't like it, what if it's not successful? I think telling yourself that you've already done something really brave and you're already successful.
Can you tell me a little bit about sort of just like quickly how sort of MYT has impacted you, and like, if any, what ways that sort of like being a part of National Youth Theatre has helped you get to this point in your career?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one because I actually haven't been a member of NYT that long. Becoming a member of NYT was like a goal of mine for years. I auditioned like, I want to say 3 times, potentially more. And so I think in some ways the process and the struggle of like not getting in, maybe it's maybe not a direct MYT thing, but it is kind of it's one of those things that hardened me as a performer in terms of you have to like work really hard and you have to be hungry for it. And then when I did get in, eventually you get that feeling of this is something I wanted for ages, and now that I have it, it's kind of like, oh, not saying that MYT isn't, it's great to be a part of, and it gives you that kind of extra kudos of being in it.
Mm.
But I think it is a healthy perspective of knowing that you're going to chase after things. And I think in a career like this one, it's always easy to be like, when I get that thing, I'll be happy, or
Yeah.
when I get that thing, I'll be successful. And I think it's better to just see it as you shouldn't base your success or happiness on getting a certain thing, and that it can just be like an added bonus. And I think NYT is definitely that.
It took me 3 times to audition. And I think the first times that was really like hard on my confidence.
Yeah.
But when I got in and I did the course, and also like I've been on the table for other auditions where they've seen someone and been like, they're really good, but maybe next year, or they just don't fit for this reason. And I've been like, oh, it was really good that I got in the specific time I got in. I would have been like too young and not as developed enough as performer. Like I would have got less out of the course.
Lost Girl is on at Underbelly at Edinburgh Fringe from the 31st of July to the 26th of August at 11:50 a.m. It won one of the Keep It Fringe funds, and it's hopefully going to be a good time. So please come.